Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sustainable Buildings Canada informational webinar. This one is on the topic of mass timber costing, not exclusively to costing, but we'll talk about that, and neighborhood level energy efficiency planning. Um, we have had a pretty long hiatus from these webinars, and we're happy to start doing them again. We support a lot of research, and we have a lot of programs going, so it's always nice to be able to give some updates to people on what we're doing and what is happening new. So I've just got a brief introduction here to what we'll be seeing later. Some research from Maheen Ahmad about mass timber. She is supporting our research in the Mass Timber Costing Guide, which I will tell you more about in a moment, and Kirstin Pulles, who has done some research at neighborhood-level energy efficiency planning. So we will have some great presentations from those two briefly. First, just a short introduction. If you don't know me, my name is Adam Jones. I'm the Director of Operations at Sustainable Buildings Canada. And I am happy to welcome everyone who's able to attend. If you are not watching this real time, thank you for going through our archive of recordings. We have a great number of webinars and videos that we've produced in the past about much of our research and the projects that we're working on. So please engage us through our YouTube channel and various social media avenues. If you have a topic of interest for a future webinar and you'd like to discuss that with us, please reach out to me. My email's there, adamjones@sbcanada.org. So for today, we're going to talk about these two projects. However, we have a lot of ongoing projects. So the first one that Maheen is supporting us with is the Mass Timber Costing Guide, supported by or funded by NRCan's GCWood program. So this is a partnership with RDH Building Science, where we are working on understanding and quantifying the costing factors that affect multi-unit residential buildings in mass timber. So Maheen will tell you more about that, but the quick summary is it is a comparative study of cast in place concrete and mass timber for a 7 to 12 story multi-unit residential building in 4 different municipalities across Canada. Another project that NRCan is supporting through the Greener Neighborhoods pilot project is Energy Spring. So this is the continuation of our Energy Sprong work that we've been doing for a number of years now. And we are funded to be part of the market development teams, which is focusing on scaling up that Energy Sprong approach to overcladding retrofits in Ontario's social housing market. Another NRCan funded project is the Codes Acceleration Fund and Toward Net Zero Communities stream, which for us is funding educational workshops across Canada, where we are looking at educating building officials on to improve their understanding of the new tiered performance path of the National Building Code and National Energy Code for buildings. So if you happen to be a building official and you are interested in learning more about that and educating your teams, please get in touch. One of our longest running programs is the Enbridge Savings by Design program. I was hoping to say we're happy to announce, but we are anticipating a continuation of the Savings by Design program in 2026. This long-running program was developed in concert between Sustainable Buildings Canada and Enbridge, and continues to be one of the best new construction programs in the country, where we help developers, builders, designers, architects, engineers find ways to get better energy efficiency with their designs through the integrated design process. And there are some incentives for participating. So if you have any of those projects, please reach out. The Better Buildings Bootcamp, which is successfully run now, I think for 5 years. We have done these as web-based boot camps with graduate students across Canada, where we teach them sort of in an intensive manner what it means to have a high-performance building and how to get there. We ran our first in-person workshop this year at the University of Toronto, and I had a wonderful turnout. And so we're hoping to continue doing those coming in the coming years. And then the Better Condos Bootcamp, we built on the model of the Better Buildings Bootcamp, and it's focused on helping condo boards and residents improve their buildings. So we happily are getting support from Toronto Hydro to run several more of those. And the intent is to help existing buildings reach their soon to be implemented energy performance requirements, particularly in the city of Toronto. So if you are on a condo board or you live in a condominium of any type, please reach out and see how we might be able to help you. All right, as always, Sustainable Buildings Canada has a great number of resources for both new construction and for existing buildings on our website. Lots of modeling, energy modeling support, lots of support for designers who are looking to try to find ways to improve their buildings in either energy efficiency, accessibility, health and well-being. There's a lot of different resources and a lot of ways that we have supported research to help feed into improving the sustainability of buildings. All right, after this workshop, for anyone who is registered, we will send out the slide decks and the recording of the webinar and information about how to contact our presenters. And as always, our videos will be available on the YouTube channel. So if you're not already watching this on our YouTube channel right now, there's the link. You can go through and find us there and find the big long list of all the webinars we've done in the past. For today, if you would like to engage with our presenters, please either ask via chat or you can raise your virtual hand. We will ask if there are any questions, and if there are questions at that point, we'll ask you to open up your mic and you can just ask directly. So a brief introduction of our presenters today. Maheen Ahmad is currently pursuing a Master of Applied Science in Building Science at Toronto Metropolitan University with a focus on sustainability and low carbon construction systems, particularly mass timber. Her work is bridging research and design and highlighting building performance, embodied carbon, and the future of climate resilient buildings in Canada. With a background in architectural science, she continues to explore the intersection of passive design with climate and cost-conscious strategies that move us toward more responsible ways of building. Her research is supporting SBC and RDH in our mass timber costing guide, which, as I said, is funded by NRCan's GCWood program. And so she'll share some progress on the developing of these standardized building archetypes that are going to be used to compare mass timber with cast-in-place concrete across Canada, and explain why this cost certainty is critical. So that will be an interesting overview for anyone who's interested in mass timber. And then Kirstin Pulles is a facilitator, researcher, and engagement specialist who drives change by centering community voices in decision making. She's a dedicated advocate, researcher, and community organizer with a passion for advancing social and environmental justice, and has 10 or more than 10 years experience advancing sustainable food, housing, and transportation with a particular focus on energy efficiency. A recent win that she has shared with us is a pilot program for free public transit for teens in Vernon, BC. That's a great one. Hopefully a step on the way to just free public transit for all, maybe? That would be great. So Kirstin will present her findings from her white paper, her research paper, Neighbourhood-Level Energy Efficiency Planning, Increasing the Scale and Pace of Retrofits in Canada Through a Local Community Approach. All right, with that, I'm going to ask Maheen to share her screen, and I will stop sharing if I can. There we go. And I want to thank you right off the top. Thank you both for taking the time to share your research with us.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Okay, can you see my screen?
There we go. And now we can see it in presentation mode. Looks great.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Maheen, and I'm in my first year of Master's in Building Science at TMU. I'm working with Sustainable Buildings Canada and RDH on the mass timber costing project as a part of my research. Today, I'll be sharing some of my research and my progress in developing these archetypes and comparing mass timber and concrete. So just a quick overview today. We'll begin with introducing the project and its significance, followed by a summary of my literature review and the project scope. We'll walk through the methodology we're using, and we'll end with some key takeaways and next steps. So mass timber is increasingly being recognized as a low carbon alternative to concrete and steel. Research consistently highlights mass timber's strong environmental potential, particularly its ability to contribute to circular economy goals. But in Canada, adoption is still limited because of a knowledge gap, specifically uncertainty around costs. So the goal of this project is to increase industry understanding of mass timber costs. The study aims to provide comparable data across different Canadian regions, since costs, supply chains, and code requirements vary across these provinces. So understanding the differences is key to scaling mass timber adoption nationally. And by developing these standardized building archetypes, we're able to directly compare mass timber and conventional systems like cast-in-place concrete. So from my literature review, I've found that there's growing support for mass timber in Canada, both at a policy level and within the industry. However, cost uncertainty compared to conventional system continues to be a major barrier. And because of the knowledge gap, insurers and financing also remain challenging because of factors like moisture risk perception and structural stability, despite there being evidence of mass timbers proving performance. So due to this reason, insurers might charge higher premiums than normal. And when we look at this data more closely, on the cost side, studies report that there's 4 to 5% savings, and project timelines can be reduced about 20% with prefabrication. It also highlights best practices around delivery, including early collaboration, BIM integration, and prefabrication logistics, which also support workforce safety and efficiency on site. But what's equally important is how early collaboration and planning directly cut down on later management costs. So the way a project is delivered has direct financial impact, not just the choices of material. And when we connect this to labor and workforce, um, uh, mass timber's ease of assembly means fewer workers are required on site, and so this improves safety because there's less risk of injury, and so these factors reduce labor costs and make the delivery with mass timber construction more efficient. Moreover, carbon performance is also significant, with a reduction of 35 to 50% in embodied carbon compared to conventional materials. While there is a strong circular economy potential, it's also important to note that the literature highlights gaps around end-of-life strategies. So there's still areas which require further research. So now looking into these research gaps, firstly, there's no standardized costing model for mass timber that combines both technical and policy-driven cost drivers, which is what makes benchmarking very difficult. And second, the research often leaves out insurance, policy, and life cycle costs, focusing only on initial construction costs, even though those factors are critical for adoption. And moreover, there are still very few costing and life cycle assessments of multi-story residential archetypes, and almost none that compare results across provinces in mass timber. And given how different regional codes and markets are, this gap is quite significant. And lastly, there are gaps in industry capacity with limited training and standardized details. Risk perceptions also remain high, which, as mentioned previously, continues to inflate the insurance premiums. So the goal of this project is to create a transparent and consistent framework for comparing mass timber and concrete systems in mid to high-rise residential buildings across Canada, by developing these standardized building archetypes under NBCC 2020 guidelines for residential or mixed-use occupancy, and then applying them to different cities. We can isolate the regional effects, and we can establish clear cost benchmarks and also support the wider adoption of mass timber nationally. And so in order to keep these comparisons fair, we're holding key parameters consistent across regions in terms of what's included and what is excluded from the archetype study. So project-wise, we start with location and site selection. Then we move on to the development of the standardized archetype floor plates for both mid-rise buildings around 7 to 8 stories and high-rise buildings between 12 to 18. Again, these will serve as a consistent basis for comparing both systems. And third includes BIM modeling to create detailed building layouts. And then lastly, the target outcome is to generate consistent cost and schedule benchmarks across the region. So essentially, it's the same building, but different materials and region. The cities that we have chosen for this project are Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa, and Moncton. And these were selected to include a diverse context in the study. First, geographic variation was a key driver since different climates directly affect the building envelope and performance, and also construction conditions. Second, we considered different urban fabrics in terms of development, since larger established built environments like Vancouver and Ottawa have dense infrastructure, and mid-sized or developing cities are still in the earlier stages of growth. So including both allows us to study how mass timber can serve very different development patterns. And we'll look more into that as we go into the specific sites for each location. And third, we looked at the market maturity and adoption of mass timber. For example, Vancouver already represents a more advanced market, while cities like Moncton, being Canada's second fastest growing city, shows emerging potential. Now we'll look more into the process of site selection for each location. Before I get into each city, just want to mention the process of site selection. So the areas we considered for all sites are between downtown and suburban context to find a middle ground. And factors like access to transit, bike routes, and walkability were considered. And preferably sites with existing buildings of similar scale to our project. So starting off with Vancouver, this site chosen is in Oak Ridge, and it is south of downtown. This is a transit-rich area that's already undergoing significant redevelopment and rezoning for mixed-use residential buildings. So there's suitable lot depths and precedents at a comparable scale, which makes this a really good site for our project. And one of the reasons I looked into the site is because of the ongoing development, which brings a lot of opportunities. There's already a lot of construction going on, as you can see. And as mentioned previously, there's also a rezoning application in this area, which allows for mid to high-rise mixed-use buildings, mixed-use building towers to be constructed. So I marked out the available lots on this site, and these areas are quite large. They're quite generous. So there's space for multiple buildings. Moving on to Calgary, this site is located closely south to downtown. So looking at the available lots, the dimensions are fairly similar to existing buildings, square footage, but they have a more tighter context compared to other locations. However, it's still considerable for our project. Next, in Ottawa, this site we're looking at is in Little Italy. It's quite similar to Vancouver, where there's a lot of new construction going on, and it has a mix of both large and mid-sized lots. And again, because of this new development, there's larger lot sizes available. And from looking at this photo from maps, because these surrounding lots are much smaller in scale, the new construction is probably for mid to high-rise buildings, which also makes it a good area to explore for our scale. And lastly, we're looking at Moncton, Centerville, which is the downtown area. And as you can see, it is very underdeveloped. It's mostly just consists of huge parking lots at this point. There's a few low to mid-rise buildings and only one 20-story building on site. But because Moncton is currently the second fastest growing city, there's going to be a lot more high-rise construction in the near future. And from our research, we found there's a lot of building permit activity from both government and institutional projects. There's also a lot of residential development and underway rezoning and planning for large mixed-use development neighborhoods. And so this is a good opportunity for us to explore this site to test mass timber adoption in an emerging market compared to previous sites with denser infrastructure. So in order to select the parameters for the archetypes, the existing lot sizes and shapes were compared across all sites. The square footage of existing similar scale buildings on each site and the reasonable lot areas were also taken into consideration. So over here on this screen, the darker blocks are the suitable average lot sizes, and the lighter ones are the ones that we considered oversized, which could be used in part if needed. But the idea was just to mark the realistic footprints that we can replicate across regions for a fair comparison. And based on this information, I'm working on designing two generic floor plate layouts of similar total areas. So I worked on a rectangular plate and a square plate. And these both consist of 10 units per floor, including 4 2-bedrooms and 8 one-bedroom units. And the plans are still in the process of being modified for spatial efficiency, but this standardized layout is to be kept simple and will be adapted for mass timber and concrete archetypes in terms of design factors such as differences in bay sizes and dimensions for structural components, etc. And so this allows us to isolate the cost and performance differences between mass timber and concrete while keeping it realistic. And also just to note, moving forward, we planned to prioritize the rectangular model. since regionally the rectangular plate fits more lots and the spaces where the spaces are deeper and narrower. And we can also considered other factors like increased parameters for daylight and coordination with column grids and unit stacking. So for the cost study, we propose moving forward with the rectangular archetype. And so just to wrap up, we're seeing a lot of opportunities for mass timber in Canada, but the progress is still slowed by policy gaps and market maturity and also risk perception. Insurance and financing in particular remain really big barriers, even though the technical performance of mass timber is promising. And on top of that, regional differences in codes and markets continue to shape feasibility. And without consistent data, it's hard to properly benchmark costs and performance. And that's why this project is really focused on developing clear, transparent costing models to help support the broader adoption of mass timber across the country. And so moving forward, the next steps will focus on refining the archetypes and adapting the mass timber and concrete floor plates along with the structure. And I'm also looking into code-based encapsulation strategies. And then lastly, I'll also be looking into the seismic force resisting systems using shear walls and cores, and considering all city-specific seismic assumptions to test performance across regions. And that's all from me. I'm really excited to be a part of this project, and I'm looking forward to continuing working on it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Maheen. Um, I am since I am actively working on this project with you, I want to thank you for your ongoing work on it. This was a really great overview of what we're working with and the challenges that are faced by this particular segment of the building industry. Um, so I'm just gonna check here and see if there are any questions from our attendees. Anyone have any questions for Maheen? Okay, I'm going to ask one question that I think is part of the challenge with mass timber buildings is you were trained as an architect, and I assume you're tied in that to some extent to that world of education at least. And I'm wondering if there was much in the way of mass timber buildings discussion as you were doing your architectural training.
Um, so during my undergrad, we didn't really look into mass timber as a building construction material. It was mostly just studio work and exploring building materials on our own, but where it was introduced was during courses like sustainability and structures. And so right now, due to the limited research in mass timber, and again, just like this project, not there not being enough research compared to other conventional systems like concrete and steel. It was really difficult, especially in terms of the hydrothermal performance, um, um, as in moisture. Now there has been a lot of research, and it has been proven to perform really well hydrothermically if designed properly. But again, the reason people shy away from it is because they don't want to take that risk in the first place. And so now that I'm actually working on researching about it, I found that one of the ways to actually take mass timber forward is to, promote it and to actually hold information sessions and to, talk about the research so people are actually aware of what steps to take in order to start building with mass timber and for it to become more in use compared to concrete and steel.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If anyone does have some questions that come up for Maheen, we will probably have time at the end. But if not, feel free to put them in the chat, and maybe Maheen, if you keep an eye on that, if there's anything that comes up, feel free to answer it there.
For sure. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to turn our attention to Kirstin's presentation. So going from the building to the slightly larger community and neighborhood level. Um, so Kirstin, whenever you're ready to share
Awesome.
your screen.
Okay, how's that looking?
I do not see anything yet.
Oh,
There we go. Now it's showing up. There, looks
awesome.
great.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning for me. I'm out in BC, so it's 8:30 here. But depending on where you are, maybe good afternoon. My name's Kirstin, and today I'm going to be talking about my research on neighborhood level energy efficiency planning. This is a paper that I wrote for Sustainable Buildings Canada. I want to give a huge shout out to them for giving me the opportunity to do this research because it's been super interesting. So, throughout this presentation, I'm going to cover, first, I want us to align on a couple of things that I think we all already know, but I want to make sure. Then I'm going to walk through what is a neighborhood, why neighborhood level planning, what does it look like. I'm going to talk about some of the challenges with expanding the scale of planning, what we need to potentially overcome some of these challenges, and then end with what I think is the most interesting, which is the financing possibilities that come out of this scale, and then a little bit about what might come next. And throughout the presentation, I'm going to be asking each of you to engage in a Mentimeter. So I'm going to put a link in the chat here. I know it's hard to focus sometimes in online presentations. So if an email or a text has caught your attention, I'm going to ask you to come back, log into the Mentimeter so that we can chat throughout this presentation. The QR code is going to come up on a few other slides. So if you aren't in it yet, it's all good. And I put the link in the chat with the code. So my first question, and this ties to the first Mentimeter here, is there's a couple of things that I think we all already know. I want us to align on this before we go forward. So I want to go over these, and then in the Mentimeter, you can tell me, do you agree with these? Did I get something wrong? Maybe you disagree with all of them, and then it'd be interesting to have a bit of a conversation about that. So we already know that energy efficiency is one of the most cost-effective ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, lower utility bills, address inequities in energy access, and increase comfort in the built environment. Canada needs to increase the pace and scale of retrofits. Number three, equity is important. Retrofits are usually planned one building at a time. There are exceptions, but most common is one building at a time. And energy efficiency is impacted by policies and programs at the municipal, provincial, and federal level. So would love to see your responses here. Let's see if the Mentimeter wants to work for me. Okay, so do you agree with these 5 assumptions? You should have that option up on your screen there and would love to hear, yep, we're all good, or, not so much. Okay, awesome. Sweet. Okay, thanks everyone. Seeing that I agree with some, would love to hear just comments in the chat, and we'll come back to that at the end. Would love to discuss. So put it in the chat. Let me know where is there some disagreement. Okay, so next I want to talk about what a neighborhood actually is. I'm going to use the word neighborhood a lot in this presentation. You'll see it a lot in the paper. The paper does have a formal definition, referencing the academic literature, but what really matters for the conversation that we're going to have today is that within this neighborhood, whichever neighborhood you're talking about, that buildings are close to one another, that there's a defined boundary, and that there is a shared sense of identity. And note that some of these can be created, right? The city could set out a definition of boundaries for the neighborhoods and say, okay, this neighborhood goes until this street, this street, this street. A shared sense of identity can be built through placemaking activities, can be built through having events together. The hardest thing to change is that the buildings need to be close to one another. So I used to live in a city, lived in Vancouver. There were very clear neighborhoods and senses of identity within Vancouver. I lived in Mount Pleasant. I felt like I lived in a specific community. I now live in a rural area, and while there is some shared sense of identity, there's defined boundaries, the buildings aren't close to one another, so some of these opportunities might be challenging. So I would love to know if these three criteria apply to where each of you are living. So let's see. Okay, so it should be up on your screen now. So where you're living now, are the buildings close to one another? Oh, sorry, shared public spaces is what I had in the draft there. But yeah, would just love to hear, and a shared sense of identity. Awesome. Sweet. Okay. So this is great because, people live in different parts of Canada. I think that, in some areas there are defined neighborhoods that would be ready to go. In some areas, there might need to be some work done to make sure that folks feel like they're part of a community and part of a neighborhood. Okay, so I want to get a little bit more specific now and explain what energy efficiency planning at the neighborhood level actually looks like. So I'm going to share a couple of examples. These are drawn from real world examples that are happening across Canada. So it might look like neighbors teaming up through their neighborhood association to plan a shared retrofit approach. So they're coordinating together with contractors, they're bulk buying materials, and this leads to lower costs for everyone and encourages more folks to get involved in the retrofit process. It might look like a community signing up for a neighborhood-wide energy efficiency challenge. The local government can provide some data, can provide some incentives, some project support, and that helps people with the improvements that they're trying to do. Or it might look like in a mixed-use urban area, a combination of small businesses and apartment buildings joining forces to create a district energy system powered by geothermal energy. So these are all examples of some of the ways that you can unlock new retrofit technologies and opportunities and options when you look at the neighborhood scale. So what are the benefits? Why introduce yet another level of retrofit planning? So there are several benefits that I'm going to outline. Again, they each draw on a real world example, something that's already happening, and want to talk through some of these. Proximity and similarity of buildings can enable lower cost solutions. So we see this in Energy Sprong, we see this in the Greener Neighborhoods pilot program, which is bringing some of these examples to Canada. When you can buy similar materials, when you can plan your retrofits together, you will see potentially lower costs. The connections within neighborhoods, that shared sense of identity that I was talking about, that can drive engagement and drive people to participate. So Tacoma Park won awards for their Community Energy Challenge. Neighbors encouraged one another to get involved and do upgrades to their homes, and the winning neighborhoods won a prize for their community. Shared values can drive a really comprehensive approach, and we see this with the Pocket neighborhood in Toronto. When folks get together and start talking about how they can improve the neighborhood, folks might look beyond just retrofits and start thinking about other ways that they can improve their neighborhood. So you can get beyond just energy efficiency and bring in other benefits. The proximity of buildings unlocks new technology opportunities. So in Burnaby, they're developing a district energy utility. A European example called Kalundborg symbiosis, I might not have said that first word exactly right, is an example of nearby buildings using their inputs and outputs together. So an output that's waste in one building might be a useful input in another building, like waste heat being used to heat another home. So this proximity allows new technologies that you can't use when you're just looking one building at a time. Neighborhood connections also increase local resilience and especially climate resilience. So the Building Resilient Neighborhoods program knows this and is trying to implement the benefits of that. The Hey Neighbor Collective is doing a lot of work on this. One of the biggest indicators of outcomes during a heat wave is your social connection. So folks who are left alone, who don't have someone to come and check on them, they can potentially fare much worse. And so bringing neighbors together, getting them to know one another and work together has the secondary benefit of increasing climate resilience in the neighborhood. Looking at the neighborhood scale also brings in a new opportunity to bring in a new scale of equity. So Seattle's 2035 growth and equity analysis doesn't just look at individual demographics, it looks at which neighborhoods have been chronically underinvested in. And so looking at neighborhood level planning, cities can identify areas that need that investment and focus there. And finally, you can generate some really cool local economic benefits. So the Regent Park Coalition does advocacy on community benefit agreements to make sure that retrofits done in their area are also tied to local job creation and local economic investment. This is what I outlined in my paper. Since then, I've even found another example coming out of New York, where they found that retrofitting block by block allows folks to electrify a whole block at once and then stop offering natural gas service to that area. Something that you can't do if you're just electrifying one building at a time in random locations throughout the city. So there's a lot of benefits. Sounds pretty great. But of course, there are going to be challenges. And so I want to hear from each of you on what you think the challenges might be with trying to work at this scale. So I'm going to share the examples from my research, but just what pops up in your head? What seems like, I don't know about that, like something would be in the way. So I'm going to give folks a minute here. I'm going to drink some water. I want to hear what you think might be tough with this approach. Totally. Capital costs for sure. I think that's a challenge at all levels. You know, any retrofit, it's going to be tough to find the capital to get it done. Coordination between multiple entities, totally. It's like, how do you even get neighbors together to make these decisions? And if you're looking across residential and business, and then the municipal government's involved. Alignment and agreement amongst neighbors, totally. Yeah, I think, you know, even within a building, you know, you need to get your property manager, your owner, the tenants, everybody needs to be aligned. Now we're expanding that. More folks, more opinions, more disagreements. Yeah, and even though neighborhoods might have some similarities, right? Every building's different. So totally. Thanks, everyone. These are great. I'm going to share some of the examples that I found in my research. So this is drawn from a 2009 report on integrated community energy solutions. This research was done by the federal government, and it's looking at not just the neighborhood level scale, but smaller, a little bit bigger across whole communities. But it's the best research that I could find to adapt to this. It's also a bit outdated, so I think this is an opportunity where, you know, we need some updated information on this. But what they found is that, like folks mentioned, decision-making complexity is even greater when you're looking at the neighborhood level scale. There's a poor understanding of the potential. I think that's starting to shift. Folks are getting more interested in this, but not everyone really understands what we're talking about at the neighborhood level. There's a shortage of experience and expertise. Not many people have been able to work on or lead projects like this. We need blueprints and pilots to, you know, develop the policy and regulatory support. There needs to be more funding for research, development, and demonstration projects. There's a shortage of accessible data and analysis tools. If I wanted to know what the energy use was like in my community, I wouldn't really know where to get that information. I can find my own utility bills, but I can't necessarily figure out the energy use across my community. So those tools don't necessarily exist, and there would be a lot of challenges, I think, with making something like that accessible. There are unequal resources between communities. Some communities, right, they're big cities, they have a lot of funds, they have a lot of money, but you'll see that not all communities are like that. And Canada's very diverse. So what is going to work in, you know, northern Quebec versus urban Alberta versus, you know, the suburbs in different cities, it's all going to be very different. People have different language and culture and existing infrastructure. So it's not easy, and there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to roll things like this out. But there are potential benefits. And so I'm going to go through these and then would love to hear some thoughts on what you think is the most urgently needed or what should be prioritized first. So I'm going to flip ahead and just start that slide, and then I'm going to go back and go back through it. So there are a lot of challenges, but there are also a lot of ideas out there about how to overcome these challenges and the different tools and supports that can unlock the benefits of neighborhood level energy efficiency planning. We need policy and we need regulation that gives folks the go ahead to do work like this with blueprints and guidance on how they can do it. We need leadership opportunities where folks have a chance to work on these projects and gain their skills, and also opportunities to have clear decision-making structures in neighborhoods. So things like neighborhood associations. we need more information. We need data access, we need best practices, we need guides and toolkits. We need to support folks in their decision making. We need capacity building opportunities where folks who do have these skills can train others. And we need market stimulation to encourage growth in the businesses that are offering these technologies and that are taking on these kinds of projects so that they have a clear path in this newly forming market to take off. So, would love to hear from folks. What jumps out the most to you? What do you think is needed the most urgently to get this kind of work off the ground? Awesome. Yeah, seeing policy and regulation changes at the top. I think, yeah, getting that go ahead from decision makers is often a big first step that we need. Sweet. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'm trying to leave enough time for questions at the end. So if you want to, input your thoughts, I'll still be coming back to take a look at this afterwards. But I want to talk about financing. Somebody voiced the capital question. How do you get enough money to do things like this? And I think that the financing opportunities at the neighborhood level are really interesting because you can take models that already exist and you can reformulate them so that folks can do group funding for the projects that they want to get done. So some examples are neighborhood small grants. It's exactly what it sounds like. It already exists. It's local or provincial governments giving small grants to local communities to do whatever project they're interested in. So it already exists. It could be reformulated for this kind of work. There are community energy programs, which is just folks coming together to, pay for things themselves. So you see this with solar co-ops, for example. So people pool their money, they're able to buy more stuff. Two that I think are a little more interesting, a little more different, is the community carbon marketplace, an example from Squamish. And that's where businesses are offsetting their carbon through investing into local carbon reductions. So you could see, for example, a local business putting money into a fund, which then pays for retrofits in their own community and thus drives down carbon emissions in the neighborhood. And so it lets you put money towards the lowest cost and most accessible carbon reductions first. The last model is a green revolving loan. So green revolving funds are where an entity gets an amount of money, they do a retrofit, the energy cost savings from that retrofit are put back into the fund and they're able to keep doing projects. You could take this model and do it for a neighborhood. So they're given a loan, they do projects in the neighborhood, the energy savings from that project go back into the funds, and then they can do more upgrades for more homes and more folks. So unlocking more people, more projects, more opportunities lets you look for the most cost-effective, the most accessible possible upgrades, get those savings, and reinvest it back into more projects. So there's some opportunities, I think, to go further with this research. The paper that I wrote is going to be published soon. You'll be able to see all of this information with the sources and the examples. Adam might know the exact publishing date, I don't know, but hopefully soon. And then I think that there's a lot of opportunities for further research on this topic. I think that there are interviews that could be done on some of these projects that do exist across the country to learn more about what they thought worked well, what they thought was challenging, and updating some of that outdated information from the 2009 research. And I think we just need more pilot projects. And I think that there are especially some really low cost and easily replicable examples like the Tacoma Park Neighborhood Energy Efficiency Challenge that we could easily bring up into Canada and show how that works and see how it works in the Canadian context. So last, would just love to hear if you have any questions. So I'm Kirstin, I work for Enroute Solutions, strategic project manager there. Add me on LinkedIn. I would love to talk more about this. I found it so interesting and would just love a chance to dive deeper. So if anybody wants to chat, just let me know. The Mentimeter is here if you do have any questions, and that's the paper there, what it's going to look like when it is published, and you can go in and read more about it. So I think instead of using the Mentimeter for questions, I'm just going to open it up. And if you have questions for me or Maheen, we've got about 10 minutes left and would love to hear your thoughts.
Excellent. Thank you, Kirstin. And yes, we should have this published on the website very soon. Um, It has gone through all the reviews. It's ready to go. So you should see that on the website shortly, but also I would recommend reach out to Kirstin, and she can send it to you as well if we take too long to get it up there. So if anyone has any questions for either Maheen or Kirstin, now's a great opportunity. I just wanted to note the overlap in our work with Energy Spring, that it is very much about how you define the community. So that comment of yours, particularly an interesting piece of it, is determining where the community ends and begins. And with our work with Energy Spring, we're focused on social housing providers, so that often is, it's delineated by ownership. But then with our other previous work in the Toronto 2030 district, very much just, it sort of may seem arbitrary in the 2030 districts around North America, but really it is based on exactly those things that you highlighted, like proximity, is a big factor, and then there's a lot of difficulty, I think, in aligning people, particularly in cities. There's a sense of competition for resources, and that certainly is one of the big challenges. So thank you for all that, and the feedback from everyone who's in attendance. Also great to see. So I'll put it back to the audience. Does anyone have any questions for Kirstin or Maheen at this point?
Hi, I do have a question here. First of all, just want to say thanks to both of you. It was a really nice presentations and good work. And my question is to Kirstin. So I'm really curious to know about the examples you gave about Squamish Community Carbon Marketplace. So from the perspective of a local government, how they are supporting them and how did they start it?
Yeah,
If
that's
you
a
have,
great question. I don't know if I know how it started, but I believe that the local government is the one who facilitated setting up the marketplace. So I can send the link because I thought it was such a cool example. And I didn't know if there were examples like this, and it was cool to see that there is one, and it's right here in my province. So this is the link here. So yeah, the government facilitates calling out for projects, like seeing who is going to get the funds that are invested. And it seems really exciting because it might be a way to inspire folks to purchase carbon offsets if they can see those benefits right in their local community.
that is true because I'm a part of a local government here, so I'm just curious to know how they all started and how do we buy in more people in terms of energy retrofit work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a question that everyone is struggling with, but that's why I find this neighborhood level exciting because it's something new. And I think that there's a lot of examples of it working quite well. Like I said, with the Community Energy Challenge in Tacoma, they won like national awards for how successful it was and the number of people they were able to engage. Because it plays on these connections that folks already have. It also can build some of those connections with folks, like to get people talking to their neighbors because they're motivated by the prize, by the chance to win something like upgrades to a park or something nearby. So I think that there's some cool opportunities at the neighborhood level that we haven't been flexing very much in Canada.
I totally agree with you actually with that thought. Yes, we are not doing, maybe we do not know the right way to do it. And
Yeah.
that is what holding us back.
Yeah,
Is we do not
totally.
know, right? Yeah, I agree. So do you have any link for that, like the Tacoma, that community who won those awards? So it would be good for me to read those.
Yes. Let me find that. It's in the paper. Let me get back to you because I'm
Okay.
yeah, send me an email or something and I can.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so I'll send you an
We-
email for
Yeah,
this.
we can also post that in our follow-up. We can include the link there.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam.
That is great. Yes, thank you for answering my questions, Kirstin.
Yeah, thanks for the discussion.
Absolutely, thank you. So I just wanted to add in there that Another community in Ontario, no, neither of these places, in Canada, that has got some really interesting approaches to this is Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. There, I'm going to just paste their link into the chat here. So they are, again, it's sort of a, municipally focused. They're really driven by the leadership in the community, to find ways to support the community by doing energy efficiency in ways exactly as you've both raised here, that keep all of the dollars in the community, but then improve uh, the experience of living in the community. So they've really harnessed this, like the overlapping benefits of energy efficiency, and it's not just, we'll save you money on your energy bills. It is very much community focused, looking at how to improve the livelihoods of the least off in the communities where they started, was with affordable housing, improving it there. But then they start it sort of rolls up together. As you start doing one community focused project, other people have other ideas, and once you see that engagement, it really does build up quite quickly. And yeah, as Kirstin mentioned, it's really quite amazing thing once you see communities coming together to do the work. Yeah, and it is, yes, we see the opposite quite a lot, but finding these really positive outcomes is really, really helpful to get them started.
Yeah, the mayor of Bridgewater spoke at a conference I was at recently, and it was really cool just hearing how at first people were like, "What are you doing?" And then they start seeing the benefits. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
actually, this is really cool.
Yeah, it's quite incredible. And he is absolutely a wonderful speaker, and really, really, you can see why people are on his side. That's for sure. Yeah. All right, we've got a couple minutes left if anyone has any other further questions. I'll just say at this point, Vandana, go ahead if you have another question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. My question is to Maheen. Just curious to know how mass timber is working in terms of wildfires. Like, is it like fire safe, fire resistant, or it has chances to be like burned during wildfires?
That's a great question, and there's actually a lot of research on mass timber's ability to resist fires. So naturally, the way mass timber is, it is built with a lot of layers, and so when it does catch fire, the most outer layer of mass timber becomes a charring layer, and that's what prevents the fire from going further into it. And so, well, because it is wood, it does damage it, but not to an extent where it would damage the entire building, maybe just the outer layer of it. And that's what's going to protect it from going forward. And there's also a lot of fire rating systems for mass timber that make it fire rated and safe for construction.
That's really awesome. I would like to read more about it.
Definitely, it's very interesting, yes.
Yeah, because part of my work is on wildfires, like fire smarting here in BC, and people really ask me those questions like what kind of material they can use, which is fire smart and has a good fire rating. It's like, yeah, it
Yeah.
would be good to suggest these materials to them.
Yeah, I know there's also a lot of research being done on if mass timber can be used in hospitals and medical facilities, and they're testing out if it's something that can be taken forward.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yes, I will make a note of it. It's good to know those things.
For sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see someone has pasted one of the papers there in the chat. So thank
Right. Wow.
yes, quick
So
answers here. So
that
yeah,
is
one other interesting thing that's happening in that space is there's a company, I think it's FP Innovations, is building a building. They're putting together a mass timber building specifically for the purposes of testing these various claims, and then proving effectively to provide insurance information. But one of them is they intend to light it on fire in various situations, that might actually occur, like a balcony fire, something like that, and then to test the response time of firefighters and how that affects the material. Because a lot of these fears around mass timber are really just about misunderstandings about the material, and yeah, as Maheen said, there's lots of information out there, but as with all these things, it's hard to if it's hard to find the research, then it doesn't really get anywhere. So it's great to hear those questions.
Yeah, I think I also feel we are exposed to like certain materials only, and only like the knowledge wise, we only know certain materials. And then when we come to those kind of things and researches, which is not for people, cannot read those ones. I think only the people who are in the research
Yes,
side or maybe in the local government, sometimes they also don't know. But yeah, this would happen. So there's a restriction behind like in there, and that is a gap too, which I feel
absolutely.
the research we do, and then how much of that research is read by the public or reaching to the public. So it's a big gap over there. I don't know how we're gonna cover it up, but yeah, there is a gap.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is why there's a lot of effort in this area right now, and the building codes across Canada, including the National Building Code, are changing to incorporate more mass timber at higher heights. And yeah, so it is certainly a gap that's getting closed.
It should be right. Yeah, whatever research is done at this level should be on the ground level too, like so that people can understand it or read it or have knowledge in that sector. But yeah, it's really good. I really want to say all the best to you, Maheen. You're in the first year of your master's, I guess. So good
Thank
luck.
you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate your comments.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thanks
Absolutely.
to you, Adam.
And thank you. We appreciate the engagement as always. It's really nice. Hopefully, the webinar has been informative to everyone. And thank you, Vandana, for your questions, and everyone else in the chat for questions and comments. So we're going to close this webinar for today, but I strongly encourage you to keep an eye out for future webinars. For follow-up from this, as I said, we will send out an email with the video link to our YouTube channel and the presentation files and contact information, so you can reach out to Kirstin and Maheen to follow up.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Excellent.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have
Thank
a wonderful
you.
day.